Welcome to the Bada Boom Podcast. On today's episode, Chris and I talk about feeling burned out and what we do to keep interested in things. Listen in to hear more. Hey, how's it going?
What's up, man?
Hey, it's been a while since we've been here. I feel like a little burned out on some stuff. A lot of stuff's been happening, but it kind of just feels a little bit more the same than anything, man. Like we've had Ant-Man, we've had Shazam, we've had some great announcements from DC earlier in the year, but I don't know, man. How you kind of feeling about the state of everything going on in comics and movies and TV?
Yeah, we've talked about it. It's that burnout's definitely set in. That superhero fatigue that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg said was settle in years ago. It looks like it's finally here, and not just with superhero stuff, but with genre stuff in general. Even with Star Wars, I feel like with the Mandalorian, I'm watching it and I'm like, yes, this is good. And then I have to be reminded of that it's out on Wednesdays. Like Wednesday will be going by, and then I'll see like someone post something or a spoiler, and I'm not even upset at the spoiler. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I guess I'll watch it. And that just goes to show you the state of things. I think it's just too much in such a short period of time. Also, I think it is good to kind of, like too much of anything is a bad thing, like diversify a little bit. I've been diving into other stuff, been watching Better Call Saul lately, which has been great.
Yeah,
And
got to
just kind
catch
of
up.
seeking out those experiences because I think I need a bit of a break of things. Like what I've actually been doing is reading a lot of manga, just because that's been pretty awesome. Like I'll go to a spot in the city and they have the widest selection in almost all the volumes. It's very easy to look at the cover and be like, "Oh, I'll try this out for $10. I get a whole like character arc and stuff like that." So it's a good experience and easy enough where it kind of gives me that those stories that I do like, that I love in genre, but it's so different where it's like, hey, this is something that I'm not always reading in the news or always seeing headlines about and stuff like that. So that's been good, but for the most part, I've been burnt out. I think even the companies have been realizing, well, by companies, I mean Disney, who owns all the companies, has realized that this is too much. And they're trying to figure out a way to slow down, but I think it might be too late, but we'll see.
Yeah, I saw something the other day where Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, just straight up said, I don't think we need to have as many sequels. Like, if someone just has two movies, that's fine for that character. We've got a bajillion characters in Marvel we can pull from.
Meanwhile, they're shooting Captain America 4.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different Captain America now, with,
Yeah.
but still, I
Yeah.
feel you.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, even with like I know you're into the manga right now, and I'm kind of diving into a couple of animated shows like Voltron and
Mm,
like the new revamped He-Man and Blood of Zeus season 2 is
yeah.
supposed to come out sometime this year. So I've been going back and watching that, and I'm like, man, there's a ton of great stuff out there that like I feel like we haven't necessarily tapped into or just talked a lot about because it's not necessarily like the mainstream stuff. But now that just feels so oversaturated and so burned out, it's like you want to definitely find that undiscovered gem that you've maybe passed up before.
Or not even undiscovered gem, something that you maybe experienced before in some shape or form, and you're trying to get that back. Like, for example, I watched Breaking Bad. I loved it. I just never got into Better Call Saul, and now I'm like watching it. I'm like, I'm getting that feeling back of watching that, and and you see it in the box office numbers too. Like, Shazam like did not do as well as I think they had hoped, especially for a big budget superhero movie. Now, did it flop as hard as Black Adam? Nothing can quite flop that hard, but you see John Wick 4, yes, it's a sequel. It is a sequel. And I get that. But what people are saying, with their dollar, hey, when I want to go to the movies, I don't. All these superhero movies have become all blurred together and they're the same experience, whether they're in different universes or not. People just want a different thing. And that's why Scream 6 did so well. It's like, yes, sequels work, but when they're different genres or something that, again, I think people have been trained to be like, you know what? I'll just wait for that on Disney Plus. I'll wait for
Yeah.
that on HBO Max. And some of these movies like a Scream or a John Wick are really worth it to see in the theater. And I think what's happened with some of these big budget superhero movies, they lack any creativity when it comes to the visual element. Like when you watch Ant-Man 3, I'm like, everyone made the comparison to Spy Kids 3, and that movie's like 20 years old. And the special effects don't look much better. So I think, and the reason I think people responded really well to Avatar in theaters is that, hey, this is a movie I would like to see in theaters. This is a theatrical experience. And we're getting to the point where consumers are kind of really drawing that line. It's like, hey, like, and this is the company's fault. They all invested in these, streaming platforms, and we love them and all that. But now it's given audiences this mentality like, hey, I am not really in the mood to go to the theater to watch this and not laugh and not have a good time, not be excited.
Yeah.
And and also theaters are not the best experience everywhere you go. Yes, you can reserve seatings, but not all have recliner seats. The popcorn is overpriced, all those things. So if you're going to spend, like, let's say you're going on a date, you're going to spend, if you're in New York, at least $50 going to the movies, right?
Yeah. Even
If you're
more.
gonna, yeah, if you're gonna spend that much money, you're like, I want to have a good time, and I want to pay for something that I won't quite get at home. So that's what you get with a movie like Scream, where it's a horror movie. So the communal experience of getting scared together is great. John Wick. John Wick is almost like a Rocky movie, just watching all the kills. Everyone's just like cheering in the theater and stuff. So that's another thing. And, superhero movies have lost that. And it didn't take long, it hasn't been too long since we were all in the theater for Endgame, cheering on all those moments. But it's been so diluted, and there's a lack of originality or creativity where the movies that are coming out, you're like, why? They're not moving the story forward. They're not, the characters they're introducing are really lame, and don't add anything power wise or visually. So I think most people are checking out on it. And in the case of Shazam, I think what sucks about that is that Shazam, I think, is, a victim of DC constantly rebooting and kind of being in a spot where, hey, I know this is going to be rebooted in a couple months after The Flash. So why should I care? I should probably wait till it's on HBO Max. And I think in like a week, it's already on digital, which is,
Dang, that's insane.
yeah, it's crazy. Again, back to it. Creed did really well in the theaters, but I was I was going through, things to buy because I think Avatar is on there now. It took like 2 months, which is an eternity these days. Creed 3 is already on there. So it's like, wait, why would I go to the theater to watch anything these days? But I think that's why people are burnt out. They just need something new.
Yeah.
Not nothing new because these are sequels, but I mean, like, hey, they're the way people are executing these things is really bad.
Yeah. I will say I didn't really feel the burnout too hard until I saw Ant-Man, and they have those things like in the beginning of the movies, like before the trailers go on, they're
Mhm.
like, here's how we did this one thing in the movie.
Yeah.
And they show this thing called stagecraft, which is like a video wall. And they're like, we changed the wall to match what we think the set would look like. So we don't actually have to go to a location and film it. And I can tell when I'm watching the movie, that's not a real thing. That's like a wall that you're creating. And they do that all the time in DC movies, but it's really bad. So you can obviously see it. You can't see it as much in Ant-Man, but they use the same technology for the Mandalorian. And I'm like, the Mandalorian's just on Disney Plus. Why would I spend, to your point, like all this money to go to the movie if I'm not going to be like, wow, this looks so great. This story is so good. If the story
But
sucks, at least make it look really good because I can get that technology every Wednesday in The Mandalorian and the story's better.
no, and the Mandalorian, the way they use it is kind of to create kind of like backgrounds, very simple backgrounds, like, hey, like this desolate planet and stuff like that. It's not really meant for really complicated things. And I think people have kind of overused it. It kind of makes, I think ever since the Mandalorian kind of went public with how exciting that technology is, it's kind of been overused, like 3D. Like when 3D movies were a big thing, and they're like, oh, like this is 3D. Then you go watch the movie, and just like the opening credits are in 3D, then the rest of the movie
Yeah.
is like regular. And that's what it feels like. With that technology, it should be used to kind of like, hey, we can't really go to a set for this because of secrecy reasons. We don't people want people like taking photos and stuff. And one place I thought it was done really well was the Batman. In the Batman, anytime they're on that because of COVID, I think they couldn't film some of those scenes on location. But when they're on that building that's in construct
Yeah,
like
I
being
know what scene you're
constructed and
talking
stuff like
about.
that,
Yeah,
like the skyline and all that, that is the volume. That is that, like, that set that's like, if you look it up, I know it's crazy when you think about it. But yeah, and it
but that's
was
done
great.
well. That's done
That's done
well.
well. Because guess what? They're just, it's like a little background thing. There's parts of the set that are actually really real. Whereas, Ant-Man was really bad, like the special effects. And like MODOK was really bad. It was funny in some parts and stuff like that. But like, the fact that they use, Corey Stoll's face and it just was really stretched out and
Yeah.
stuff like that. It just looked really weird. And again, it went back to that, that Spy Kids movie, Spy Kids 3, because it looked exactly like, George Lopez's character when they're in the video game universe. But yeah,
And it's the
it's
same
just,
plot.
it's the same plot. And, going back to kind of what Steven Spielberg said, these movies probably are going to go the way of the Western, where it's like, yeah, they're really popular now, but probably in 5 to 10 years, they're going to be like, oh, like there's going to probably be one superhero movie every 5 years. And we're like, oh my God, this took us back and stuff. I think the way to kind of save it is just going back to kind of making each film its own thing. I think the Batman was really successful in that,
Yeah.
and James Gunn was really smart to be like, hey, let's not take that away, because people will go see this because this is very unique. It's a theatrical experience. That movie is not as good as at home. I love that movie, but like when I saw it in theaters, the sound, the way it looked. So I hope with the new DC stuff, they kind of do that. And I think what I'm excited about is that even though they have projects, they don't have release dates. They're not going to force anything to happen. They want to get good writers, good directors on it. And I hope that's the case. And, because this summer there's so much coming out, and, I'm really excited to see Guardians 3 and The Flash, but
There's
summer
so there
blockbuster season is, yeah.
you've only listed two movies and what we've got.
There's a Indiana Jones, there's a Fast X, there's so much coming out this summer, but there's only two that come to mind where I'm excited about, and which is sad. It could be that I just turned 30 and I'm like, all right, I'm over this. Maybe this is a phase of my life that I'm kind of getting past, but I'm just not excited about anything anymore.
Yeah, and like it is a lot. It's overload. If it was like, hey, I'm seeing maybe three things this entire year that I'm super excited. Or like when I remember like Doctor Strange and like maybe it was Ragnarok. I was like, dude, we're getting two Marvel movies in 1 year. I was like so excited. We're at least getting two in 1 year. And now it's like, bro, at one point in time we're getting four. But despite, this oversaturation of content, I saw something today and I was like, oh, I think this was the tipping point of where we really started to feel the constraint of all this shows and movies and stuff. And it came out in less like it came out a year ago this week, and that's Moon Knight. And like, I mean,
Well, I was really excited about that, and
I was too.
yeah, I think it could be the string of badness that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth with like Moon Knight. I like She-Hulk, but I thought Miss Marvel was really average. I couldn't get through it. And another thing is, it's like I used to be like, I have to watch all of these things, and now it's become like I can skip it. I didn't watch Andor. I didn't finish Miss Marvel. And I almost was like, as I got close to Ant-Man, I was like, I don't know if I really want to see this. When I saw it, I was like, one, it didn't feel like an Ant-Man movie like the previous two.
Yeah.
And two, it was just after I left, at first it was like, okay. And then like the more I thought about it, I was like, actually, this movie was really bad. Just because it felt like just like it was literally written by like an AI like chatbot, just because no, it just had no soul or anything like that, which is sad because I that it's the same, same filmmakers, same cast. So you wonder what happened along the way for it to land on something like this. But kind of going back to like the general question, like, do you think there's a way for you to kind of get out of this burnout phase? I kind of touched on it myself. I think it's just I've been seeking out other experiences. I think, if we didn't have this podcast, I probably would cool it on trailers in general. We have a couple mutual friends that don't watch trailers. And I'm like, I think that's the life I need to live to
Yeah.
kind of get excited about this stuff again. So for you, what do you think would get you out of this like rut? And, I think it's a rut for everyone, but for you, is there something you're working on or you're trying to do to get out of it?
I think it's for me because like I do really like comics and comic book characters, and like if someone's like, "Hey, do you want to read a DC comic over a manga or an anime or something like that?" I'll be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna lean more towards the DC stuff." But there are other characters and other animes and stuff that I do really like, and I think trying to tap into those, I've either kind of like put on the back burner or been like, "Oh, one day I'll read those," or there's been a couple of Marvel and DC characters that I'm like, I really don't know too much about these, but like I see them every now and then. Let me like pull some of those comics out and try and learn more about them. But it's really just like trying to find like those one like the booster golds of some of these kind of franchises and trying to really dig deeper into some of those. I gotta say, quick plug for Marvel Snap because they've introduced me to so many characters that I was like, I've never even seen this character. And I've read Marvel comics and watched the show since I was a kid. And I'm finding out more and more of all the characters that they have, which I think in the end will lead to me wanting to see the movies more or like, let alone Quake is like a character in Marvel Snap. And I'm like, oh yeah, that was in Agents of Shield. I should go back and watch that because I only saw like the first season. So stuff like
Hazmat,
that.
that Disney Plus series coming soon.
Dude, actually Hazmat's like one of my favorite characters to play in the game.
Yeah.
So I was like, yo, let's do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, stuff like that. I think they're for Marvel, it just definitely feels like there's too much content available and none of it's like exciting enough. So finding though like those other franchises that I haven't like dug deep into or I only know on a very surface level is really what I got to do to kind of be like, yeah, I'm passionate about this. I want to like this is going to be a priority on like a day off or whenever I have free time to look at this thing or read some more.
Yeah. Again, that is the point. I think we kind of have to cleanse things. And, if Guardians of the Galaxy is a 10 out of 10, this kind of Marvel is a family member. We forgive easy. And just not just Marvel. I know we kind of like pile on. I think all of these companies, it's just too much, the level of content is just whereas you kind of got two of these projects or three overall, you maybe get two and maybe two Marvel, one DC, and then every 5 years you get a Star Wars project. Now you're getting three of each every
Yeah.
year, and it's just become too overwhelming. But not overwhelming enough to stop the podcast. So thank you guys for tuning in. Sorry about the break, but I think we both needed it for life and just getting burnt out on all things in general. But what do you guys think? Are you guys reading anything or watching anything outside of the pop culture stuff to kind of really give yourself a little bit of a palate cleanse? And with that, bada boom.
Bada boom.
Thank you for listening to the Bada Boom podcast. Keep the conversation going on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Get in the comments on our YouTube channel and let us know what you'd like to hear next. And please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen.